Good morning, guys, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys my book collection, or a bookshelf tour, if you will. So this is a video I've been wanting to make for you guys for quite some time. I really love reading, I love books, and I wanted to share with you guys what I have in my little mini book collection. If you guys are new here, welcome. My name is Alithia. On this channel, I usually do focus on minimalism, decluttering, all things that are feminine, a little bit of skincare, makeup, home decor, things like that. So this will be a little bit of a different video, but I would love for you to subscribe and check out my other videos. And without too much further ado, you guys, let's hop into the video. If you guys have a favorite book, let me know down below what is the best book you've ever read, or a favorite book, or a book that changed your life, a book that stuck with you, that you would really recommend. I'm always looking for good book recommendations. And with that out of the way, you guys, let's jump into today's video. Okay guys, so as you can see before me, I have my bookshelf in my bedroom and I have a cup of coffee here, and I'm just busy sipping on what's left of my Tim Hortons coffee. So it's going to be very impromptu. I'm just going to take you through my bookshelf and tell you the name of the book, the author, and tell you just like a generalization of what I know about the book or what I think the book is about. Some of these books I have read, a lot of them I have not. About a year and a half ago, I started devising myself a library. I wanted to have a lot of classics. There are quite a few classics that I read back in high school or in university, but I wanted to revisit them. And I also wanted to design kind of a home, like personal library of sorts. So just to preface this video, my favorite genres of books would be some fiction, depending on the time it was written. I do like fiction that takes place in the late 1800s, early 1900s. I like a little bit of historical fiction. I don't mind a little bit of a nonfiction, depending on the type of book. I don't really like sci-fi. I'm not really much into science fiction. I'm not really into fantasy, although I do have a couple of more fantastical books in my collection. I'll tell you guys, like, as I go through, why I have those books and why I got them or why they interest me or whatever. As we go through, I'm not really into like romance unless it takes place again early in the 1900s or in like the mid-century. I really love watching like old house tours and old mansion tours of houses that are pretty much untouched from the late 1800s, early 1900s, that still have the same furniture and maybe some pictures on the walls and old books and stuff like that. I'm just absolutely fascinated by it. I find it very romantic. So I do like a love story that takes place in those kind of times. I appreciate the mannerisms and I appreciate the way people did things in those days. Yeah, I'm not much into fantasy and like dragons or aliens or anything like that, like science fiction, not so much into that. I think my taste in books actually really reflects my taste in movies and TV shows, which I'm not really into watching a lot of modern day series. It really depends. There'll be the odd one that I find kind of captivating or kind of interesting, but I'm really not. I don't like modern day chick flicks, for example. I don't like a lot of mainstream television. There's a lot of TV shows that I find to just be way too over the top. They just have content that they would have been previously rated R, and now it's like all of that stuff is rated PG-13, it seems, and it seems like it's just everywhere. I'm really not interested in a lot of modern day, like present time TV and series. One thing I would say is that I haven't read a lot of mystery or like thriller content. I haven't read a lot of that content, although I do like a good mystery movie, so maybe I should start reading books that are like that. I like a little bit of drama. I like something that has a captivating story, like a story that really just grips you and captivates you. I like something that when you watch it or you read it, it changes your life, it changes your perspective. Like you never look at something the same way again, or you never think of something the same way again. For some reason, I also kind of have a fascination with World War II content. I think because the things that took place in World War II were so absolutely horrific, it seems like something you could only imagine, something straight out of a movie. But there is such good content based around World War II stuff. Just like, I think it's important to pay attention to and to acknowledge the stories of other people and to acknowledge what people have been through and listen to their words. And what makes a good story interesting is when you know it's actually true, like it actually happened. It's so much more captivating, and it's also kind of harrowing but also fascinating in a very sad, melancholic kind of way. So yeah, hopefully that is helpful. I don't like a lot of lighthearted reads. I also don't like watching comedy. Like, comedy is not my favorite thing when it comes to movies and stuff like that. I don't enjoy watching comedy movies. I prefer like some sort of a drama or something impactful. For example, I cannot stand like, I don't know, like your modern day, like Will Ferrell kind of movie. But I loved movies like Schindler's List and The Pianist. Anyways, you guys, without too much further ado, let's get into my book collection. I'm just going to start with the middle shelf, I think. I will save the top shelf for last because there's a couple books on the top shelf that are kind of there because I didn't really know where else to put them. I don't really have the bookshelf arranged in any rhyme or reason. So as you guys can see for the display of the books, I do have some of the books turned with their spines toward the wall. The reason for that being is that even though I love the way books look on a shelf and I love having my books in my bedroom, I don't necessarily want a whole bunch of loud colors in my bedroom. And I've gone back and forth. I know some people really don't like when you put the spines of books backwards. However, I think that it looks a lot more pleasing to the eye and a lot more calming and relaxing because some colors of books, like some covers of books are bright red, some of them are orange, some of them are green, there's bright blue, there's yellow. They're just really loud colors. They're not necessarily colors I want like yelling at me in my bedroom, especially when I'm trying to sleep at night. So I have them arranged this way so that the colors are not super loud and super screamy. Again, there is no rhyme or reason. I also tried to display them in a way that would make sense with the heights of the books. I kind of tried to mix the heights of the books around so that you had some shorter, some taller, tried to keep some of the taller books toward the ends. And I just tried to arrange them in a way that looked pretty in a sense, but honestly, I did not put a lot of time or effort into putting these on the shelf. I just wanted some of the more bright, colorful spines to be facing back toward the wall. And some of the more pretty ones I kept facing out, or the ones that are a little bit more neutral in color. And yeah, other than that, they're kind of a mishmash. I have a little bit of like classics. I have a little bit more modern classics. I do have a few more I think probably 3 more fantasy type books, which I don't even know if I'm going to enjoy or not. Yeah, another thing that I want to say is how many books do I want, or like what's my approach to minimalism and a home library or like decluttering. So first of all, I want to say I much prefer a physical book in my hands as compared to something like a Kobo or a Kindle. I don't like reading things on an electronic screen. I feel like these days everything is done on a computer screen and it can be very jarring to the eyes. It can make you very tired. And I love the smell and feel of real books. I have always been spellbound by the feel and the smell of a book. I remember when I was younger, my grandmother used to read books to me that were very old, like vintage fairy tale books that her mother would have had for her or that she would have had when she was younger. And the smell of those books, like they just had this beautiful old, if you know what I'm talking about, you know, if you've ever smelled a book that is literally 50 or 75 years old, you cannot replicate that feeling. It's just so nostalgic. So holding a book like that for me holds so much more value than reading something on a Kobo or a Kindle. The other thing is I've even considered getting a Kindle at one point, but I don't like the idea that you have to pay for a subscription to read books. And also when it comes to books online, I've noticed that quite a few books I did want to read, I couldn't find them on that subscription for the Kobo or the Kindle. This is where I love like developing my own kind of library. I took a lot of time. I looked on Amazon, I looked at Barnes & Noble, I looked at, I went to Chapters Indigo, and honestly, there is not much more relaxing for me than getting a Starbucks drink or a coffee on a cool fall day, like a rainy fall day, and wearing a cashmere sweater and going into a bookstore. There just isn't much I like better than that. I could spend and have spent hours drinking a coffee and just browsing books at the bookstore. And that's where a lot of these books came from. So they were hand-picked. I'm really big into the covers of books as well. I usually try to get the prettiest cover. I really like a lot of collector's editions. So if I can find a really pretty special edition or collector's edition, I will go for that. Sometimes I like entire series or like a box set. So that's how I feel about that. In terms of like decluttering and maintaining it, I don't really know what direction I'm going to go with that. I kind of have this dream in my head that one day I will have sort of a reading area in my house where I have like a really relaxing, comfortable chair to sit in and a little table to put like my cup of tea or my book and kind of a whole section of walls, or a whole section of bookshelves full of books. Like ideally, I would have about 3 of these bookshelves here, which is a very tall bookshelf I got from Walmart. Ideally, I would have 3 of them side to side, all full of books and decor and trinkets and like vintage and antique things. That's my vision. That's my dream. So it kind of does conflict a little bit with me because, as you guys know, I operate a lot of my life as somebody who likes simplicity and minimalism. I don't like clutter. I don't like having a lot of things to maintain. I don't like collections. But when it comes to books, for some reason, there's something about books that calls me, and I love them. So yeah, I think that physical books are wonderful and special and beautiful because they are the method through which we have shared education and information and stories through the hands of time, through history. They didn't have computers, 200 years ago. So the only way to share a story or an idea was through the written language, through a book. And so for me, it's kind of like a universal way of commemorating something that goes back throughout history, and it's very special to me. And I much prefer it to reading something on a screen or to an electronic. Plus, if your electronic goes, it's gone. If you lose your Kindle or you unsubscribe or you no longer have that article. But if you have the physical book, you have it forever. Books are also special because you can hand them down to family members. For me, they're very cozy. They're very comforting. I like holding books. I like looking at books. They make beautiful decor. In terms of how I will go forward with it, I'm probably going to continue to kind of have a collection of books. I would like to have a home library. I think the only time I will ever get rid of a book or pass a book along or not finish a book is if it is particularly traumatic. Like there's something in there that's very traumatic to me that is triggering and I can't bring myself to finish it. Or if I just find it very, very uninteresting. Like I've had a couple books here that I thought I might be interested in, but after I kind of read through a few pages and kind of flipped through, I was like, yeah, I don't really know if this is going to hold my attention. Don't know if I like the storyline. Even if it was a classic, I'm not going to force myself to read. And that being said, I have read some classics that aren't here that I loved, like Robinson Crusoe and Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn, those kind of books. I don't have them here, but I have read them. So that being said, I don't plan to keep everything that I read, but if things are special or I just love the book or I love the story or things that I think are very monumental, important pieces of literature, like the Jane Austens, other books like that, Frankenstein, like the very first kind of, science fiction type, I guess I do have science fiction type of book ever written, those kind of things. And then as for modern literature, it has to have what I think is like a really interesting story. It has to have a story that I think might be impactful. But yeah, so that's about it. I do see myself possibly weeding out a book or two as I go through, depending on how I feel about the book. If I feel like it's classic enough that I really should read it, even if I don't particularly love it. Yeah, but I definitely have DNF'd a couple books in the past because as I got into it, there was some like particularly triggering material that I just didn't want to expose myself to. So that was a lot of ramble, but those are my thoughts. Those are my quick thoughts on books, book collections, how I feel about books, why I love books so much. And now let's just get into what I have here on my shelf. Oh yes, and if you guys have a book recommendation, something that you think I might like based on what you see here in front of me, or just a favorite book that isn't too triggering and that you think I might like based on what you see, please write it down below for me so that I can check it out next time I'm at the bookstore. Okay, so let's start out with this shelf. This is arguably my favorite shelf because it has some of my favorite books on it, and also because I think it's the prettiest in my entire collection. And as I said, what I tried to do actually was on this particular shelf, I tried to have all of my I shouldn't say really good, but all of the most important classics to me, I tried to have all the classics on this bookshelf, but they didn't fit. I tried to keep more modern literature down below and then like the older literature up here. Let's start out with this one here. Okay, so this is a special edition or a collector's edition, and I apologize, you guys, I am not a huge booktube literature buff. I do not know all of the lingo, and I do not know all of the companies, and I do not know exactly which ones are what editions or anything like that. I just know that I really like them all. So this one I know is either a collector's or like special edition of Anna Karenina from Leo Tolstoy. I think I might have one other Leo Tolstoy in my collection. I'm not really 100% sure. So this is just an absolutely beautiful book. I love that it has the gold on the side of the pages. I think that looks really beautiful. Just an absolutely stunning book. I love the way the spine looks on this one as well. This is one of the prettiest books I have in my collection. It was a little bit more expensive. I did order this one from Amazon, and I'm not exactly sure where. Might have been like from Barnes & Noble or something. Not 100% sure, but this one did take a little while to get to me, and it is one of my favorite books in my collection. I have not read it. Very, very long, but I'm really looking forward to reading that one. But this is definitely one of the prettiest. I want more books like this in my collection. I prefer also hardcover when I can find like really nice editions of hardcover. So that is Anna Karenina. The next one is a classic. This is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This I am so looking forward to reading. I have not read it yet, but I heard that it is an amazing book, and also it's one of the very first like science fiction books ever written, or maybe it is the very first science fiction ever written, so I'm super, super excited to read it. I absolutely love the artwork on this book. I just think it is stunning. Okay, the next book is from Jane Austen. This is my special edition of Northanger Abbey. This is the one that my dog destroyed, not this exact one, but this book, which is part of my Jane Austen collector's set or Jane Austen book set that I got. So I don't even know what edition this is, you guys. If you guys know, feel free to tell me. But I just think this is so beautiful. So I had gotten this even though I already had an entire like box set of Jane Austen. And I just thought it was so beautiful. I would really like to get more that look like this. And they didn't have a whole lot at the bookstore that had this kind of design or that were made like this. So I ended up getting just a box set from Amazon. I'll just read to you what the back says here. It says, "No one who had ever seen Catherine Morland in her infancy would have supposed her born to be a heroine. Her situation in life, the character of her father and mother, her own person and disposition were all equally against her." Such a beautiful, beautiful cover, beautiful book. So then we have more Jane Austen. I don't know what set this is or what this is like from. It's a Penguin Classic, looks like. So this one is just Mansfield Park. Pride and Prejudice, of course, which is another classic. You see, now I'm putting them the wrong way. That's why I do it this way. This one, I left the spine out. This is Emma. I have not read Emma. I'm really excited to read that one. It's a lot of people's favorite. That one and Pride and Prejudice. I have not read Pride and Prejudice yet either. Honestly, you guys, I thought that Jane Austen was going to be a lot harder to digest, but actually, as I'm reading Northanger Abbey, I don't find it to be that difficult. Personally, I found Charlotte Bronte to be a little bit more difficult to read than Jane Austen. I find the language in Jane Austen actually pretty good. It's very like whimsical though and romantic, and she's just so well spoken and such a beautiful writer. And her books take me to a different period in time. Like this era in history is kind of my favorite era in terms of books. It's what I love to read the most. It just really transports me to a different time and place, and it makes me feel so happy. I just love it. Very relaxing. And I just you guys, it blows my mind to think that people spoke like this and dressed the way they did. And yeah, I don't know. Just, I'm having a moment. I'm having a antique vintagey moment here. Okay. The next one is another classic, which is Sense and Sensibility. This is a really pretty one. After that, we have Persuasion. Have not read that one yet either. And then this one here with the spine out, which is really pretty with the little shoes on the front, is Love and Friendship and Other Youthful Writings, it says, from Jane Austen. So I'm not really sure what this is. Friendship is spelt wrong. Is that purposeful? Did they do that on purpose? Is it spelled wrong here too? Oh my gosh. They spelled friendship wrong. Can you believe that? The next one here, this is a classic, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I'm really excited to read this one. I haven't read it, but it sounds amazing. I do believe it's about, isn't it about somebody who moves into a house with her husband, but his previous wife or something, her ghost still haunts the place. Isn't that what it's about? I can't quite remember. So it says, while working as a paid companion to a domineering elderly lady, the timid heroine of Rebecca meets Maxime de Winter, a handsome widower. His proposal of marriage takes her by surprise, and she is whisked off to Manderley, Maxime's Cornish estate. But the friendless young bride soon comes to realize that she barely knows her husband at all, and in every corner of the room she is haunted by the presence of his beautiful first wife, Rebecca. Yes, I'm so excited to read that. I cannot wait. Again, I think that's going to be a great one for fall, winter, getting closer to like Halloween time. I'm not really a huge Halloween buff, you guys, but I just think it's going to be a good, like, mysterious kind of a fall book. Okay, next, I believe this is Little Women. Yes, this is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Again, this is the Penguin classic. So I'm really excited to read Little Women. I have not read Little Women, nor have I seen any of the movie renditions of Little Women. So I'm really excited to read that one. I think it's going to be a lovely little book. I kind of started reading, like flipping through it, and then I ended up picking something else. Next to that, we have from Charlotte Bronte, we have Jane Eyre. So this was one of the very first classics I read front to back, and it is the last one that I actually finished, I do believe. I actually read it pretty quickly, faster than I thought I was going to. The language in it is a little bit, like, sometimes I had to read something more than once, but I really found this to be such a beautiful, kind of sad, interesting story. I loved the romance in it. Like, this is my kind of romance. This is my kind of romance story, something that isn't too in your face. I love that the type of romance was almost like, I don't know, there was a lot of tension, and I really like got into the mind of Jane Eyre and felt for her. Like, yeah, the moments where she feels sad, or like, you know, the person doesn't care about her, or the longing that she had for him. And yeah, particularly the ending I really liked. It was interesting. It also had a little bit of mystery, had a little bit of a kind of a mystery aspect to it as well, a little bit of some creepy vibes as well with a couple of the characters. And there was like this running mystery all throughout the book amidst this story of this young girl and the love story that's in it as well. Really, yeah, I just really liked it. I found it a really enjoyable read, even though the language was, I had to get used to the language, but yeah. So that is Jane Eyre from Charlotte Bronte. Next we have from L.M. Montgomery, we have Anne of Green Gables. I have not read Anne of Green Gables, but I watched Anne of Green Gables a lot when I was a child. It was one of my mother's favorite shows on TV. And we also used to watch Little House on the Prairie. I love that time era. Like, I used to fantasize as a little girl about being a pioneer. My grandma and grandpa had a large acreage, and on their acreage they had an antique cottage, and they had all of their old like buildings that were from their property growing up. They had like their old barn and their old hay shed and everything. And in this antique cottage, they had it filled with a whole bunch of antiques and vintage things, like Old Spice containers, women's beauty products, and there was an old wood burning stove. There was bonnets. There was a super old oven. I wish I could go back there. I spent a lot of my childhood in that cottage. We would all dress up and we would give ourselves like very basic names, and we would pretend that we were pioneers, and we all had a job to do, and the men would go out hunting, and the men would go out and work, and the women would stay home and look after the babies and bake and clean. And it was just so wonderful and so magical, you guys. Some of the happiest memories of my childhood. So anyway, yeah, Anne of Green Gables and these type of books are just wonderful to me. They just make me feel a certain kind of way, warm and fuzzy inside. So I've seen the shows, haven't read the books. I think this is just like the first one. I think there's a lot more Anne of Green Gables books, and I would like to read more of them. So again, this is one of those areas where I think like my collection could grow, and these are the type of books I would like my daughter to read one day too. The next one, this one I don't really know anything about. It is E.M. Forster, A Room with a View. I just got this one because I heard it was a really good classic, and I watched a few booktubers channels. One that I love, her name's Emmy. I love her, although she is extremely smart and she's really into English literature and she knows her stuff, and I feel like she probably has much better reading and apprehension abilities than I do. Some of the books that she recommends I feel like maybe would be like, honestly, like not my reading level. Like I'm smart and I can read fast and stuff, but I feel like she's a whole other level. This was one of the books that I think I think she said this was one of the books that she liked. I've watched all of her like classic literature recommendations. A lot of these came from her. If you guys are looking for more book recommendations, definitely check out Emmy. I love her and her vibes, her whole channel. I just find her very, very relaxing. I kind of went down the Emmy rabbit hole last fall, winter, and that was when I really started to get into collecting books. Okay, so that is A Room with a View. So I'm excited to read that as well, although I really don't know what to expect. This one sounds wonderfully interesting and mysterious, although I have no idea if it is that or not. I believe this was another Emmy recommendation. This is Shirley Jackson, We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I love the picture on the front. I think that this is like kind of a mystery, isn't it? Or like, oh yes, okay, so it says Shirley Jackson's beloved and last Gothic tale of a peculiar girl named Mariquette and her family's dark secret. Mariquette Blackwood lives on the family estate with her sister Constance and her uncle Julian. Not long ago, there were 7 Blackwoods until a fatal dose of arsenic found its way into the sugar bowl one terrible night. Acquitted of the murders, Constance has returned home where Mariquette protects her from the curiosity and hostility of the villagers. Their day passes in happy isolation until cousin Charles appears. Only Mariquette can see the danger, and she must act swiftly to keep Constance from his grasp. Ooh, that's exciting. The next one is a classic turned into a movie. I have not seen the movie. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio. This is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This is just one that no matter what I looked up, no matter what lists or like top classic recommendations, everybody says you should read The Great Gatsby. So I'm actually a little bit of the ways through this. I started reading it. I'm about 30% of the way. To be honest, it hasn't really like super grabbed my attention yet. I'm kind of waiting for that like aha moment where I'm like, oh yeah, this is an amazing book. Like so far I'm kind of forcing myself to read it, but I haven't gotten very much of the way through. I'm probably going to have to restart because I don't even really remember what's going on. So that's The Great Gatsby. I know the basic premise of it. To be honest, I find that a lot of movies ruin books, but more on that in a moment. I prefer to read the novel. If there's a movie and a novel, I'd rather read the novel. Okay, this one apparently is amazing. It's Ernest Hemingway. I think this might be my only Ernest Hemingway book. This is A Farewell to Arms. I cannot wait to read this. I also really like this edition. I love the art on the front. Okay, the next one is Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. Again, a classic, is super popular. I have not read it. I feel like this one is going to be a little challenging for me to read because I think the language is going to be a little bit different. The journey of Pip, from his young days of admiring the rich from afar to his own experience of living as a gentleman among London's elite. So that's what, and I mean, it's just like a very long novel. So I feel like that's going to be a long one. I feel like this one's going to be challenging. I'm not really excited to read this one, to be honest. It's not like not one I'm most excited to read at the moment. Next, we have this absolutely beautiful edition of The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I liked this book. This one's kind of like a mystery. It's really about physical beauty versus beauty that we have on the inside, and it's about vanity, and it's about aging, and it's about people's perceptions of you, your perception of yourself. There is a little bit of an interesting kind of mystery throughout it that I really enjoy. I found it interesting. I found it a pretty good page turner. Like, I wanted to keep reading it. I wanted to see what was going to happen. I actually did some annotations as well. I had a few favorite parts. Let me see if I can find one here to read for you guys, like favorite parts of the book. There were definitely moments in this book that I really loved. I actually shared them with my boyfriend. Okay, so I'll just read to you guys one little excerpt that I really liked that I actually highlighted, and it kind of gives you a little bit of an idea as to what the novel is about as well. And it says, "You are not jealous of the material things, are you? You who are finer than any of them? I am jealous of everything whose beauty does not die. I am jealous of the portrait you have painted of me. Why should it keep what I must lose? Every moment that passes takes something from me and gives something to it. Oh, if it were only the other way. If the picture could change and I could always be what I am now. Why did you paint it? It will mock me someday, mock me horribly." So I don't want to spoil it too much for you and tell you guys specifically what it's about. It involves a portrait of a young man who is very good looking, and he basically is jealous of his portrait and wishes that he could always be as youthful and good looking as his portrait. But then it develops into kind of this mystery, and some weird things start to happen to the portrait of him, and some weird things happen to him, and he goes through a whole bunch of trials and tribulations, and it just gets really interesting. And he himself becomes not such a great person. I don't want to spoil it too much for you guys, but it's a really interesting book and I really enjoyed it. And I also found the language not too challenging. So that is The Picture of Dorian Gray. I really, really enjoyed this one for sure. It was a pleasant surprise. And finally, at the very end, we have Wuthering Heights from Emily Bronte, which I'm also extremely excited to read. I don't really know the difference in writing styles between Charlotte Bronte and Emily Bronte. All I know is that they were sisters. But yeah, I'm super excited to read Emily Bronte and see how different it is from Charlotte and just see what their different writing styles are. Okay, on to my second shelf. So this one still has some pretty good books on it. It does have some more classics, actually some classics I'm really excited to read, and also a couple classics that I think are just gonna be really interesting to read. But it also has a couple more modern day books, a couple that made like top 10 lists or like bestsellers, books that were really highly recommended. This one is A House in the Sky by Amanda Lindhout and Sarah Corbett. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing any of their names properly. I don't really particularly love this edition, to be honest. I don't like that it has a bright blue spine. You guys can see why I put some of the spines backwards, because otherwise this bookshelf would just be way too colorful in my room. So this one sounds like it's just going to be a little bit more of an interesting story. It's not necessarily a classic. It says, in 2008, Amanda Lindhout traveled to Somalia, where she was abducted by a group of masked men along a dusty road. Held hostage for 460 days, Amanda survives on memory, every lush detail of the world she experienced in her life before captivity, and on strategy, fortitude, and hope. So this just sounds like a really interesting read. Like, not necessarily, I mean, I'm not such a huge fan of, I wouldn't say that's my favorite genre of book to read, but the story itself sounded really interesting and I heard really good things about it, so I grabbed it. The next one I'm actually really excited to read, and again, it's more of a modern book, As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zulfa Katu. I hope I'm saying that properly again. And as I understand it, this is about a girl who works in Syria, and she works in healthcare in Syria, and she wants to escape war-torn Syria before her sister gives birth, and I don't really know much about it other than that. But I read some really good reviews of this book, and also the artwork on it is absolutely beautiful. And I also am really interested in reading people's stories about being over in Syria. We actually have friends where I live who came over from Syria over 10 years ago, and we're really good friends with them, and actually some more of their family members just came over yesterday, so it's really exciting and I'm just so happy for them. Salama Kassab was a pharmacy student when the cries for freedom broke out in Syria. She still had her parents and her big brother. She still had her home and an average teenager's life. Now Salama volunteers at a hospital, helping the wounded who fled through the doors daily. Secretly though, she is desperate to find a way out of her beloved country before her best friend and sister-in-law Layla gives birth. Salama is torn between loyalty to her country and her will to survive. So that's pretty much about it, but I just think it's going to be a really interesting story, and I'm really excited to get into that one as well. Next, we have another classic, Interview with a Vampire. I almost didn't buy this one because I wasn't super interested in reading it myself, but every time I was looking for like top 10 lists or top recommended books or books everybody should read in their lifetime, Interview with a Vampire came up. Again, I did not see the movie. I'm really excited to read it and kind of get my own opinion about it. I don't even really remember what it is about. So here it says, here are the confessions of a vampire, hypnotic, shocking, and chillingly erotic. This is a novel of mesmerizing beauty and astonishing force, a story of danger and flight, of love and loss, of suspense and resolution, and of the extraordinary power of the senses. It is a novel only Anne Rice could write. So yeah, I don't know if this is going to be my exact favorite type of book, but that's okay. We'll get into it and we'll see. I feel like it's a book I should read. The next one, this book actually has multiple little stories in it. So this is The Yellow Wallpaper and Other Stories by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. So all I know about The Yellow Wallpaper is apparently it's about a woman who has some delusions or some mental health things, and I think she's like hallucinating or imagining things. I don't really know. I feel like it's an earlier take on what it's like for somebody to have a mental health problem in a time when it wasn't really widely understood and there was more stigma and people didn't really know what to do about it or how to properly help somebody when they have mental health problems. So this one has a whole bunch of short stories. It's got The Yellow Wallpaper, An Extinct Angel, a whole bunch of other stories. So maybe they'll be good, but I specifically got this book because of The Yellow Wallpaper. So the very first sentence reads, "It is very seldom that mere ordinary people like John and myself secure ancestral halls for the summer. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. I'm excited to read that one. I think that'll be really good too. I feel like that would be a really good book to bring. See, this is why I turn them around, because it's bright yellow. But I feel like that'll be a good book to read, like bring with me on a vacation or something, because there's lots of little short stories. So it'll be good to read on a plane. I feel like you could get through a story rather quickly. And then you could read another one. Probably not the most like peppy thing to read by the pool when you're on vacation. Okay, this one, you guys, I can't tell you how excited I am to read it. The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. This is such a beautiful book. So gorgeous. I ordered this one from Amazon and it literally took about 2 months to get to me, maybe even longer. But I had another like paperback version and I didn't even want to start reading it. I wanted to wait until I had this beautiful hardcover. This is a Chiltern edition, I guess. So I'm super, super excited to read this one. Not only is it beautiful, but the story sounds amazing. Okay, so this kind of book is not my preferred type of book. I'm not huge into like murder mystery thrillers, at least not modern day ones. This is one of the most classic Agatha Christie books that's out there. So I thought I wanted to read something by Agatha Christie. I've never read anything by her before, and I just thought this would be a really great place to start. So this is Murder on the Orient Express. Again, I have not seen the movie made about this book. I would really rather read the book than watch the movie. So I don't know how I'm going to feel about it. I don't know if it's going to be my type of book. I might really enjoy it, or I might find it kind of boring and difficult to get through. I don't know, but we'll see. I thought I should probably try reading something from Agatha Christie. If I don't like it, I can always pass it along. I don't ever have to read it again, but I just wanted to try it, because when you look at books, like the top most recommended books that everybody should read, Agatha Christie's name comes up over and over and over. So yeah, if you guys have read any Agatha Christie and you have something that you like and would recommend, please let me know. Let me know how you liked this book without giving me too many spoilers. The next one I think is going to be really good. It's John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. So this one, as I understand it, is placed in the Great Depression, during the period of the Great Depression. I'm really, really excited to read it, actually. It sounds like it's going to be a very interesting, compelling, and touching story. And being that my grandma grew up during the Great Depression, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what she went through, because she always tells me stories about during the 30s, how things were. And it just sounds absolutely horrific and difficult, and times were very different back then, and I just think it's going to be really interesting to read that. I think it's going to be a really interesting book. I don't know if it's going to be a favorite, but I would like to read it. I feel like it's one of those classics people should just read. Again, I believe there's a movie about it. I haven't seen the movie. I haven't seen a lot of movies. I had a period of life where I didn't watch a lot of movies. Yeah, I don't know. I started watching movies more so like in the last probably 7 or 8 years or so, because my boyfriend was a huge movie buff and he and I started watching a lot of movies together. But yeah, I had a huge period of time where I really didn't watch a lot of movies. So I feel like I'm missing out on a lot of classics. But yeah, I'm happy that I'm going to be able to experience a lot of these novels before, or like without even looking at the movie, because I feel like you just get something from a novel. I feel like with novels, it's so much open to interpretation and imagination. You can really fantasize and like picture people, and you can paint an image in your head of how people look and how situations look and how rooms look, and you really get this idea in your head of a story and of a person. I feel like sometimes movies kind of ruin that for us. Like, for example, when I read the Twilight series, I read the entire Twilight series, and I really liked it. Granted, I was a lot younger when I read it, but then I saw the movies and I thought the movies were awful. I thought the movies really did not do the books justice at all. And so people who've only ever seen Twilight but did not read the books, really, really missing out. I really liked the books. And again, I'm not really into like vampires and werewolves and stuff like that, but I was younger, but I really did enjoy the Twilight series, but I thought the movies were just atrocious. The next one is my boyfriend's favorite book of all time, Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. Really excited to read this one. Again, I think it's a classic. I can't believe I didn't read it during high school or university. It was never a required read for me. I feel like it is a required read for a lot of people. I guess it depends on what program you're in, but yeah, for us, we didn't have a huge emphasis on literature, and not specifically on classic literature. So yeah, Brave New World, Aldous Huxley. Super excited to read this. It says, in a perfect world with no poverty, sickness, or sadness, what is society missing? This question and the answer provided by Huxley in Brave New World are perhaps the reason the novel continues to resonate. The ultimate explanation of how today's world works, written in 1932. Super, super, super excited to read that one, especially because it is one of my boyfriend's favorite books. I want to know why. It's a favorite book. Again, I like those books that are very compelling and change your perspective, causes you to look at today's world in a different way. I love those kind of books. That's what I love about reading. It completely changes and broadens your perspective on everything. That's what's so magical about it. Takes you out of your box. I feel like people today don't read enough, and people are stuck in their own sort of echo chamber, and they follow certain people and they continue to feed themselves the same things over and over and over, but they don't ever learn anything new or like change their perspective or broaden their horizons. And I feel like it's just so important to expand your mind and learn new things and learn new perspectives. And sometimes, I honestly feel like reading books is one of the most important things you can do to become more cultured and help you to see things in a different light instead of always being in this circular kind of absorption of whatever it is that you surround yourself with. I feel like there's so much to be found in books. Okay, here we have a really popular one, J.R. Tolkien, The Hobbit. Have not read it, have not seen the shows, have not seen Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I know that might be weird. I've never seen Lord of the Rings. I've also never seen Star Wars. I'm not really into that kind of stuff, although I know those are like classic movies and I should see them. But again, I would rather experience the books than the movies. So I think it's going to be great to read The Hobbit, having not had any movies or anything to influence me. But yeah, I'm just super excited. It seems like a really just like kind of strange and magical and interesting little world to get into. So I'm really excited to read this book. I don't know when the time is going to be. Like, when will I want to read The Hobbit? I don't know, but I feel like it's something I kind of wish I would have read in school. So I just would have already had it done by now, because I don't know if it's going to be my kind of book, but I think it's going to be interesting. And this is one of those books that I brought into my collection because I was like, even if I don't think it's my personal favorite genre, I still think it's one of those books everybody should read. I want to have that breadth of knowledge of having read The Hobbit. Does that make sense? Here we get into a more modern book. This one was written a little bit more recently. This is All the Light We Cannot See. This one is set in World War II as well. So yeah, I feel like there's been so many great books centered around World War II, and I'm not really sure why, but there's something about it that I find so compelling and so interesting. This one was also made into a movie, and I have not seen it. So again, I think that's going to be really good. It's going to work in my favor. I'm really, really excited to read this book. I don't know when that'll be. I feel like I have other books I want to read first, but this one sounded like it would be really good. Again, it's one of those books that's not necessarily a classic, but just got really good recommendations and really good reviews. So that is All the Light We Cannot See from Anthony Doerr. Apologies if I'm not saying that correctly. Oh wait, this one sounds really interesting. I feel like this might be really sad. So this is called A Man Called Uva. If I'm saying that properly, it's by Frederick Backman. And I don't really know too much about this book, but what I do know about it, I believe this was also an Emmy recommendation. And all I know about it is about a man. Without giving away too much, I don't want to have like any triggering words or anything, but it's about a man who basically wants to end things. But as he goes about his travels and his journeys, he keeps on finding reasons not to end things, and he keeps on waiting like one more day or one more week or something like that. I guess I don't know exactly how it ends. I have no idea any of the individual nuances. I don't know why he wants to end things, but it just sounded like a really interesting, good little read. I feel like this will be a really good one. It says that it's warm, funny, and unbearably moving. I'm kind of already sad. Like, I feel like I'm gonna cry reading this book. I hope that I got that description correct. I think that's what this book is about. That's one of the more like modern, it's kind of random. Like, it doesn't really fit into the typical type of genre or book I would go for, but it just sounded like it was a really, really interesting little story. So I'm kind of interested to get to know this man here in this book. Okay, I apologize. I apologize if I say this incorrectly. So Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering that. So this one sounded like a really interesting book as well. I don't actually remember what it is about. Again, this one is kind of random. I just heard that it was really good and I saw really good reviews. I don't really know what it's about, but the story sounded very intriguing and I'm really looking forward to reading this one. Again, we have a more modern read. This is Educated by Tara Westover. This was a super popular book. A lot of people have read it. Even a few years ago, I know I was at work and a couple people at work were reading this book and everybody thought that it was a really good read. I actually did start reading it a few years ago, but I never finished it, so I would really like to finish it. And all I know that it's about is a family that's basically kept away from society and raised, I think underground, like in a hidden home away from society. And I don't think they went to school or anything like that. I can't quite remember. But anyways, it sounds like it's going to be a really interesting book. I was really intrigued during the first couple of chapters, but I never did actually finish it back in the days when I discovered it. So this one I'm super excited to read, although it's kind of more, I don't know, honestly, you guys, I do prefer the more historical novels that take place like 100-ish years ago. I think that's kind of where my heart is. Okay, so here we have another one that is centered around World War II. Again, of course, I don't know what it is. I just am so intrigued by these World War II books. Every time I find what sounds like an interesting story about somebody going through something in World War II, I just think it's so intriguing. So this one takes place in Germany in 1939. As the war begins, Hannah, a young German woman, is sent to live with her aunt and uncle after her mother's death. Thrown into a life of luxury she never expected, Hannah soon finds herself unwillingly matched with an SS officer. The independence that her mother lovingly fostered in her is considered highly inappropriate as the future wife of an up-and-coming officer, and she is sent to a bride school. There, in a posh villa on the outskirts of town, Hannah is taught how to be a quote-unquote proper German wife. The lessons of hatred, prejudice, and misogyny disturb her, and she finds herself desperate to escape. So yeah, I just think this is going to be a very, very interesting look at a woman's perspective who essentially, it sounds like she has to learn how to become German back in those days, and the belief systems and the values, and it just sounds like it's going to be really, really interesting. I love the artwork on the front. So yeah, I'm really, really excited to read that one. That is The School for German Brides by Amy K. Runyon. I don't even know if I said the name of it. This was just a random find at Chapters. The next one is another World War II book. This is The Midwife of Auschwitz. Now this one sounds like it's going to be a hard read, and I don't like particularly triggering things, but I also there's a difference between reading something that's triggering. It really depends on what it is. I think sometimes people put triggering stuff in shows and books for shock value. Like a lot of TV shows these days just try to reel you in and catch you with the shock value of something, because it feels like they have to keep on one-upping themselves and show you more and more in your face, unbelievably just stuff that you think, wow, I can't believe that was in there. I can't believe that they showed that. So a lot of it is fictitious, and I think this is based on a true story. I'm not 100% sure, but when it is kind of triggering stuff that isn't just put there for shock value, it actually took place, that's when I feel like, yes, it's possibly going to be difficult to read, but also it's important to acknowledge what people went through. So I feel like it's just more profound, and I don't know. I appreciate those kind of stories where it's not just fictitiously made up as kind of a shock value kind of thing. It's more like, this is what people went through. I think it's important to acknowledge what people went through. So the back says, Auschwitz, 1943. As I held the tiny baby in my arms, my fingers traced the black tattoo etched across her little thigh, and I prayed that one day the set of numbers, identical to her mother's, would have the power to reunite the family torn apart by war. It says, inspired by an incredible true story, the poignant novel tells of one woman's fight for love, life, and hope during a time of unimaginable darkness. So yeah, that already sounds gut-wrenching. to read. I almost cried reading the back of that book, but I think it's going to be a very, very good, interesting read for sure. This one is also a very popular book, and this one again, I don't know if I will be able to get through it. I hear that it is really hard to read. It's The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I have not, didn't they make this into a show as well? I didn't see it. I think they made it into a movie, I'm pretty sure. And I have not seen that movie, so I don't know exactly what goes on. I have a little bit of an idea. I don't know. I don't know what the style of this book is going to be. I don't know what kind of mood it's going to be. I don't know how graphic it's going to be. It sounds kind of awful, so I don't know. We'll see. It occurs to me that I have a lot of depressing books on my shelf. Okay, this one is The Old Man and the Sea, a true story of crossing the Atlantic by raft. Now this sounds a little lighter. Not super light, but definitely lighter than The Handmaid's Tale. This is by Anthony Smith. I have not read it. I just think it's a classic that I think I should read. I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it. I don't know if it's going to be my kind of book. Next we have by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I hope I'm saying that properly. 100 Years of Solitude. So the reason I have this book is because it got amazing reviews. So many people hyped it up and said it is one of the best books they've ever read. Apparently it is kind of challenging to read. Apparently you have to go back and read a few things a couple times because it kind of bounces around between characters, and apparently the characters have like similar names. But people who read this say it is their favorite book, like best book of all time, changed the way they thought about things, changed their life. Yeah, so I kind of like took a peruse through it, and it didn't jump out at me as like a book. Like if I would have found this at the bookstore, I don't think I would have picked it up and brought it home. But because it gets such great reviews, I do want to give it a read. If you guys have read 100 Years of Solitude, please let me know. Okay, next we have a classic that I think everybody has read, myself included, which is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. So I remember this was recommended reading, I believe in my first year of university, or was it my last year of high school? I can't remember, but this was a required reading. And I don't remember all the ins and outs. I have a gist of what it was about. I just remember that I loved it when I read it. I thought it was a really incredible story and really touching. And one of those books that just stays with you. Like it's one of those stories that just stays with you. So I wanted to read it again. So I think it's going to be amazing to read a second time around. But I remember doing a study on this book when I was in school. I remember it was like a huge deal. And so I'm really excited to take another look at this book. Okay, so this is The Color Purple by Alice Walker. I believe this is about two African American women, and it's basically communicating through letters, and it's told through letters to each other. And apparently it's just about the trials and tribulations and the difficulties that they go through in their life. It sounded really interesting. This one got lots of awards. So I have read a couple books that were along this vein before. I found a lot of them very hard to read. One of them was so triggering for me I couldn't continue reading it. Here we have 1984 from George Orwell. I am about halfway through this book and excited to see how it ends. It's basically about a dystopian society where you have things like thought police and just the ultimate in trying to control society and the population. And it's very, very interesting to me that this book was written long before things were as they are now. It's kind of scary and kind of sad, but it's interesting. So yeah, I'm about halfway through this book and really excited to finish reading it. Here's kind of a funny little one, Animal Farm. So I feel like I can't believe I haven't read this yet. I feel like everybody's read it. I feel like it's like required reading for like middle school, high school, but we never had to read it. Like it wasn't on our reading list. It basically tells a story of like society through the eyes of farm animals. But yeah, I'm really excited to just give it a quick little read. I feel like it's going to be, again, one of those books that is, although a quick, short, easy read, profound, like having some profound points to it. So yeah, I can't believe I already haven't read this one, but I definitely want to read it. I definitely feel like this is one of the classics for sure. Oh, another George Orwell. I didn't even realize, sitting right beside each other. I kind of like this George Orwell fellow. He's got some interesting ideas. So the last few books, you guys, except I have one more on the top shelf that I can't remember what it is, but the last few are a little bit more modern. So this is The Book Thief, another World War II book. This is by Marcus Zusak. I have not read it, but I kind of flipped through the pages the other day and I'm already like completely enthralled by it and I cannot wait to finish reading it. All right, the next one was another top recommendation. Again, kind of out of left field, but this is Circe by Madeline Miller. So this one sounds really interesting as well. It gets really good reviews and I think it's going to be something different, something interesting to read, a little bit more mythological. I think it's going to be quite interesting, quite intriguing. I haven't read anything like this before. So then we have this kind of rather lonesome, smaller shelf on the top. I just had a couple of oddball books that didn't really have a place to go. I'm not really sure what that one is there. And then these ones are the Hunger Games trilogy. And then this one is the Goldfinch from Donna Tartt. But I'll just quickly pull them down and put them on the shelf here and show you what they look like. Okay, so here we have another World War II based book. This is The Girl Who Survived Auschwitz, a true story. As you guys can tell, I have a thing for World War II based literature and movies. Okay, so now I have the Hunger Games trilogy from Suzanne Collins. I don't particularly love this genre of book. I did want to at one point read all of the Game of Thrones books and kind of all the most popular trilogies and the most popular series, but I don't even know if it's going to be my cup of tea. I did watch the show, The Game of Thrones, and while it had some content that I found disturbing and some content that wasn't really my cup of tea, like I can go without seeing that kind of stuff in TV shows, the overall like stories and themes I found extremely interesting and entertaining. So I still might want to read the Game of Thrones series at one point, although I know it's not completely finished. But it just is really long, and I don't even know if it's worth bringing into my collection at this point in time because I can't see myself getting to those books anytime soon. I feel like I'm going to have a lot of time on my hands. Books like that, the Game of Thrones and stuff, there's a lot of characters, there's a lot going on, there's a lot of little mini stories within the stories, and lots of little character segues and stuff like that. So I feel like I'm going to have a lot of time dedicated to a series like that. So I thought this would be a good kind of little introduction into sort of a fantasy world, the Hunger Games. So I did see the first movie, the original Hunger Games movie, and everybody says the books are better. This is a trilogy that I very well could start and not finish and just pass on. But I still want to kind of try reading it and see if it's something that I like. So I kind of wanted to have, like, within my library, I wanted to have a few options for myself just to see if it was something I was even going to enjoy. So that's The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay. And I even thought about rereading the Twilight series again, but I don't know if it's worth rereading. And then finally we have another more modern, more recently written book, which is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. So again, everybody who reads it calls it a masterpiece. Everybody who reads it says that they thoroughly enjoyed it and that it's an amazing book. And I just, amongst my collection of kind of classics, I also wanted to get a few more modern pieces that just came highly, highly recommended. I wanted to kind of dabble my toes into a few different types of waters and see what I thought. So yeah, so we'll see. I don't know. We'll see if I enjoy it or not. If you guys read this book, let me know what you thought. And also let me know if you have any other recommendations that you think I might like. So that up there is kind of my oddball shelf that they basically just didn't fit anywhere else. So I would have to say the books I'm least looking forward to reading are the more modern ones, like The Goldfinch and Circe. I heard such good things about them. 100 Years of Solitude. I hope that I like them. I don't know if they're going to be my cup of tea or not. More contemporary fiction, it's not my favorite. I definitely prefer like more historical fiction or like things that are based around true events or somebody's experience about something. And I also really want to read the classics. I really enjoy reading more classic works. So guys, that's pretty much it for my book collection. In terms of decor that I have on the shelf, like I said, I kind of have a vision in my head of having eventually 3 bookshelves back to back of lots of books, but then also like with some feminine kind of whimsical, vintagey, antique-y kind of decor. Right now I just have a couple random things. The little pearl purse on the bottom that was here before when I had my bookshelf set up differently. I have a couple vases on the bottom, and then on the top I just have some faux flowers, and also in this little trinket dish. This is a little trinket dish that I got from H&M Home, and this actually has a few bookmarks. So these are actually just magnetic bookmarks. I think I got the magnetic bookmarks from Chapters Indigo, and this little The little tray came from H&M Home, but I thought that that cute little seashell was a nice little place to put some bookmarks. So I just keep those up here. And that is about it. So you guys, that was it for my book collection or bookshelf tour. I hope that you guys really enjoyed seeing what I have here, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some recommendations down in the comments. I hope that I see some great classic recommendations or just some books that I might really enjoy. So as you can see, I'm still definitely trying to figure out what I enjoy reading. But that's it for today, you guys. Thank you so much for being here with me today, and I'll see you all very soon in my next one. Bye for now.